Nearly 7 months before Election Day, we've got foreclosures on the rise. We've got financial assets shrinking, gasoline above $3 a gallon. Detail for us your economic plan to take us higher.
Well, it's going to start with dealing with the immediate crisis, both in the financial markets and in the housing market. And obviously those things are connected. On the housing market, to prevent foreclosures, I think it is important for us to create some bottom, some floor, give people some sense of where does this end. And so I'm a strong proponent of the proposal that Chris Dodd and Barney Frank have put forward, having the FHA step in to help stabilize the market. It's not a bailout for borrowers or lenders, but what it says is we will rework some of these loan packages so that they're affordable. Step number two, I think, to stabilize and provide confidence in the financial markets, it is appropriate for the Fed to take some of the actions that it has. But I think it is also important to make sure that we couple that with some new regulatory structures. If the Fed is going to be a lender of last resort to investment banks, then it is, I think, legitimate to make sure that those banks are subject to some sort of requirements, both in terms of liquidity and capital. So that would be, I think, a second important step. And then the third thing that I think is important for us to do is to understand that the economy long-term has been out of balance for quite some time, even before this current crisis. I mean, we had high corporate profits, enormous rises in productivity over the last decade, but wages and incomes have flatlined. And so you had a lot of concentrated wealth at the top, but ordinary folks were getting hammered.
How do you plan to change the tax code when it comes to capital gains? How high will that 15% rate go?
I think that we can have a capital gains rate that is higher than 15%. When I talk to people like Warren Buffett or others, and I ask them, how much of a difference is it going to be if it's 20 or 25%? They say, look, if it's within that range, then it's not going to distort I think, economic decision making. What it will also do, I think, is allow us to make investments in basic scientific research, in infrastructure, in broadband lines, in green energy, and will allow us to give some relief to middle class and working class families who have been driving this economy as consumers, but have been doing it through credit cards and home equity loans. They're not going to be able to do that. And if we want the economy to continue to go strong, then we've got to make sure that they're getting a little relief as well. For those folks, I want an offset on the payroll tax that would be worth as much as $1,000 for a family. Senior citizens who are bringing in less than $50,000 a year in income, I don't want them to have to pay income tax on their Social Security. And as part of my overall approach to housing, I actually want to provide an additional 10% mortgage deduction, a credit, mortgage interest credit, for those who currently don't itemize.
But can you really look at this sort of like in an umbrella standpoint? I mean, we are in very, very unique times right now. Why raise taxes at all in an economic slowdown? Isn't that going to put a further strain on people?
Well, look, there's no doubt that anything I do is going to be premised on what the economic situation is when I take office. I mean, I'm going to be sworn in January. We don't know what the economy is going to look like at that point. The thing you can be assured of is that I'm not going to be making these decisions based on ideology. I'm not a dogmatist. I know that some my opponents to the right would like to paint me as this woolly-eyed, liberal or wild-eyed.
You're not a liberal?
But my attitude is that I believe in the market. I believe in entrepreneurship. I believe in opportunity. I believe in capitalism. And I want to do what works. But what I want to make sure of is it works for all America and not just a small sliver of America. And if it turns out, if somebody can make a persuasive argument to me that, what we need at this juncture, at this particular point in time, is a different set of policies than some of the ones that I've proposed, I'm always going to listen to people because I think one of the problems, in fact, with the Bush administration has been its rigidness when it comes to economic policy. I mean, you ask them any question, they'll say tax cuts. It doesn't matter what the problem is. If it's, our trade deficit, tax cuts. If it's, slowdown in manufacturing, tax cuts. At a certain point, if you've only got one arrow in in the quiver, then you're going to have problems.
Let me move on from taxes. I don't want to spend all the time there. Let's talk about small business. This is the one area of the economy that really is creating jobs, yes, small business. You want to index the minimum wage to inflation. We'll see the minimum wage go up every year. You are looking to strengthen the unions, basically making costs go up for small business. Why put a further strain of expenses, higher expenses, on the one place in the economy that's actually creating jobs?
Actually, that's not entirely true. It is true that I think that having the minimum wage go up every 10 years is a bad idea, and it's not good for small businesses because they get socked with sudden jumps as opposed to something more gradual that they can build into their cost structures. It is true that I think that unions are a useful thing, but generally that's not affecting the average small business. That is typically much more targeted at large companies who, again, wages and incomes have not gone up for the average worker over the last 7 years. There's a reason for that, and that's a problem. I actually want to provide more tax breaks to small businesses because I think they are the primary generator of income. And one of the areas that I want to help small businesses on is their health care costs, which are crushing them. And if you talk to a lot of small business owners, not only are they having problems if they provide health care to their employees, but they're also having problems paying health care for themselves. And if we can provide them significant relief there, then I think that there are going to be a whole bunch of small businesses who are going to be much more successful in building their businesses and expanding it over time.
But you say that, but we've had small businesses on. They're terrified. They feel that their costs are about to soar.
I know. Small businesses often get terrified because people ramp up the chambers of commerce. Anytime you talk about the minimum wage, the sky is falling. The sky doesn't fall.
Well, you just heard what Senator Barack Obama had to say about the economy, taxes, and small business. Up next, part 2 of my interview, why every investor needs to hear his thoughts on the Fed, healthcare, and NAFTA trade around the world. That's next.